Hello, fellow chatterers and book lovers, and anyone else who's popped in because you're curious or you've got a bit lost. Welcome, everyone. I'm Chatty, and welcome to my channel, Chatty the Mad Chatter, where I'm going to be chatting away madly about my May TBR, particularly as it connects to the Asian Readathon. So cheers, everyone. Go grab a mug if you want to. We will get this video started. So first thing you need to know about my channel, if you've not been here before, is I do all my videos in one continuous shot. So I don't edit because one, it takes a load of time, and two, my computer can't cope with editing anymore. So I don't. So here we go. Clink, clink, clink. One shot, no editing. Prepare for chaos. Or fingers crossed that this is marginally normal. So usually with my TBRs, I do play my TBR game, Book Ladders and Bookworms, but I am taking a break from it this month because April was crazy. April was crazy. I got greedy. I decided to take part in 3 readathons. I had a million of books to read, and it didn't really leave me a lot of wiggle room. I didn't write any reviews, and that was one of my goals that I wanted to change. I didn't want to go completely mental. So, new, start, breathe. May, I have been so excited to be able to do the Asian Readathon. So because I already know what I want to read for this, I was like, there's no point me playing my TBR game to choose random books because I've already chosen them. So let's take a break and I will just do my TBR in a non-book game way. Now, this does make me feel sad because I love playing the game because it's so much fun. However, if you miss it, I basically gave you 2 in April. So I did my April TBR, but I also did TBR Live where I got people to help me play the game and choose, I think it's about 10 books for my seasonal shelf. So I have a shelf of books next to my bed where I kind of rotate it on sort of like a seasonal basis. So sort of like every 3 months. And I come to the end of winter, wanted a spring one, so I played game live. So there is, I think it's like 2 hours of footage. So if you're missing the game, go and watch that. I'll put a link here. And there will also be the playlist as well at the end. So if you're missing that, you can go and find that. However, if you are here for Asian Readathon, let's just crack on with it, shall we? And talk about books. So if you are not sure what the Asian Readathon is, let me tell you. It is a month-long readathon throughout the whole month of May, which has been created by Cindy from Reads with Cindy. I think this is her 5th year of doing it, but her video will be in the description box with her announcement video and the links to her channel. So please go and watch her and you will get all of the information that you need. She's hilarious, so if you haven't found her, go find her. And this time, so last year she did a film as the prompt link, and this year she's chosen another film called Joyride, which features 4 Asian girls on a crazy adventure going to look for one of the characters' adoptive parents in China, and it's all sorts of chaos. So it's kind of like your white guy bromance trip across wherever with ridiculous stuff going on, but it's 4 Asian women instead. So these are book prompts that have been created being inspired by that film. So the first one is the very, very easy one. Read a book written by an Asian author, which is quite easy to do. So I'm going to come back to that one because that's basically any of the books I want to read can apply to that one. So instead, I'm going to start off by talking about books that I want to read for prompt number 2. But I'm also going to give a couple of recommendations as well if you're looking for other books that you would like to read and try. There are loads of other book recommendation videos out there. So in the video, Cindy explains that she has got on Storygraph like a book list, which has been really helpful actually. I used it because I'd got my list of books I wanted to read, and ones that I had where I was able to fit them in because I don't know a lot about my books going into them. I prefer to know very little because I like to kind of just discover things as the story goes on. So someone mentioning, oh, this book features a strong female friendship, or this book features sort of like generational story, and someone really enjoying it and raving about it, that's all I need to kind of get the attention. I don't need a kind of plot synopsis. So that was really helpful for me to kind of work out which prompts I was going to put where. But also, oh, who is it? Hold on a minute. So my brain is going blank and I can't check because I can't stop recording. So massive apologies. I cannot remember her name because she doesn't really say her name at the front of videos. I'm feeling it begins with S, but I don't know for sure. But anyway, her channel is called Got a Thing for Things, and I will leave her name. Massive apologies for absolutely blanking on it in the description box. And she has yearly produced a big reading list. So in total, I think there's like 80 books because she did like 50 and then another 30 this year of different ideas you could read for different books you could read for the Asian Readathon. So definitely go and check those out for ideas as well. But I thought I'd put a couple of my ones in too. Is that everything I needed to say? Oh yeah, so you can double up on the prompts. So you could read a book that hits 3 of the prompts. And then you could read a book that hits 2 of the prompts. However, every book you read needs to be from a different country. So you can't just read 2 books that were from Vietnam. You'd have to, you know, read 1 book from Vietnam and 1 book from India. So you have to mix it up a little bit. So the second prompt is read a book featuring friendship between 2 Asian characters. So the book I am choosing for this prompt is actually one of the books that I was helped with for my seasonal shelf, and it is Zen Cho's The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water. I cannot tell you how excited I am for this. I love Zen Cho's duology that she wrote first, so I'm really keen to read this novella. And then I've saved Blackwater Sister for last because I know it's the last Zen Cho. I haven't heard of any more books coming out by her at the moment, but I really loved the 2 that I have read. But this one, it's a little novella. I think it's a very different style to the ones I have read, so I'm hoping I still enjoy the writing style. But I know nothing about it. I believe it's a monk that goes into a bar or an inn and then is involved in something that's happening, but I've no idea what's going on. So if you want a better synopsis, I have all the books I talk about linked in the Storygraph description. Linked in the description box where with their Storygraph links that you can click. I'm so rubbish at explaining this, and I should have explained that before I started launching into the books. Anyway, they all have trigger warnings, so that's really helpful if you're someone that needs trigger warnings. I really recommend click it if you're interested in any of the books. I always recommend going and looking at them on Storygraph because then you can look at, as well as a synopsis, you can look at the trigger warnings as well, which I think is really helpful. And of course, people's reviews. So this is a book that is going to be for prompt number 2. So let's put it on the shelf. So I have 2 other options that you could read for this as well. So I read this last year, and this is Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Sukagwaru, and it has been translated from Japanese. So this is Zen Cho is of Malaysian heritage. So we've got Malaysia and then we've got Japan. So Sweet Bean Paste is a story, it's a contemporary story, and it has an unlikely friendship between these 3 characters here. In particular, these 2. So we have Sentaro, who is he's sort of a chef. He's sort of feeling really kind of like down on his luck a bit, that he's kind of screwed up his life, but he's working within this restaurant as a chef. He's kind of the sole person responsible for making the sweet bean paste. And he meets, I can't remember the name, Toku. So this is Toku. She's sort of an elderly lady, and there's something kind of not right with her hands. When I started reading it, I wondered if she had like arthritis or something. But she used to make this a lot, and there was a sign in the window that he's looking for a volunteer to support him in working. And she volunteers, and he's really not sure about it to start off with, but then does let her. And it's just so beautiful seeing the friendship of these 2 unlikely people develop. There is also a schoolgirl as well, whose name escapes me, who with her friends always comes to buy the sweet bean paste. And Toku has a much better sweet bean paste recipe, and the way she does it and how she talks to Sintaro, they both kind of grow through knowing each other, and it's really beautiful, and you find out a lot more about Toku in this. And I was not expecting to love the story as much as I did, but it was a really heartwarming story, and goes through a lot of issues that you wouldn't have thought of, some of the kind of social issues in here. So it's really beautiful, so I highly recommend this one. However, if you are a fan of historical fiction with a little bit of magical realism fantasy in there as well, I also highly recommend, I don't own this book, which is really sad, but I did borrow it from the library, and it is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. And this is a story about, pardon me, a young girl called, I don't know if she's called Zu or if that is the name of her brother that she takes on. Anyway, poverty, and her dad and her brother, she kind of lives with them, that really not making ends meet at all. And her brother has a fortune of being very great, and she her fortune is nothing. There's nothing there, and circumstances happen, and she decides to take her brother's fortune and go off and achieve great, and she ends up in this temple being a Buddhist monk. Then there's kind of army clashing. We're also following another character. There's this kind of war happening between rebels and sort of the empire, and it is sort of a reimagining kind of interpretation of I might be saying these wrong, so I do apologize, the Yang dynasty falling and the Ming dynasty ascending, I think. And sort of more towards the end, there is sort of what's called the mantle of heaven, with kind of more of a fantastical aspect. But it is really watching this kind of story and rise of Zu. So it is really fun. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really brilliant. I know it doesn't kind of suit all people, but I just really love the character of Zu. Again, with all these books, do check the trigger warnings, but this one definitely has a friendship between two Asian characters. There's different friendships between different characters, so that's always fun to explore. It's also got a sort of, there's queer representation, there is disability representation, and it's just a really fun, historically detailed story. So let's look at the third prompt. So the third prompt is, I have a little notebook so I can remember and don't get my words mixed up. Blah, blah. Words mixed up. That's kind of ironic, isn't it? Okay, so the third prompt is, read a book written by an Asian author and or featuring an Asian character that is focused on identity and self-discovery. So for this one, I'm choosing a non-fiction, and I am going to be reading Mandala Yousafzai's We Are Displaced. And it says, my journey and stories from refugee girls around the world. So Mandala Yousafzai, I think it's Yousafzai, is best known for the book I Am Madala, the girl who stood up for education and was shot by the Taliban. So she is from Afghanistan, but I believe this features all sorts of different stories in here about what it is like to leave your country and go somewhere else and try and establish a life for yourself there. So definitely exploring a lot of identity within this book. I'm really keen to read this one because I just think that the concept is fascinating. I want to understand more of what it's like to be a refugee. I live such a privileged life. I'm very fortunate that I have not had to leave my home, and I can't imagine what that must feel like. And I think it's important to hear stories from these women and the bravery that happens to them, and kind of help with our understanding and our empathy towards people, especially when you hear of refugee crisis and people coming into the country all the time on the news. So I think it's important to kind of get this perspective as well. This was one of the Shelter book club books. I subscribe to that book every 6 weeks. You get a book in the post, You can vote on them. They do give you a list of 3, and you can vote on whichever gets the most votes is the one that is picked up, and then you can join in with discussion on their Facebook page, and they have like a book club kind of Zoom that you can be part of, and they usually have like an author interview as well as some other things. I unfortunately have never, I managed sort of like the first one to kind of be watching, but I didn't manage kind of after that. I kind of fell behind with everything, but I do really want to read the books, so I'm looking forward to that, and then hopefully I can watch some of the book clubs kind of in retrospect. So this is one of my goals, to be kind of getting through my Shelterboxes, so that will really help as well. So this is my one non-fiction book. I don't typically read non-fiction, although I have been reading a lot more this year, which is great, but I don't want to like burn out from reading too much non-fiction, because it's not my normal go-to, and I think I'll be a bit overwhelmed and exhausted from reading too much. I find I have to kind of like stop and take it in sometimes with non-fiction, because you know it's real. Stay. It's not going to stay, is it? No, it's not going to stay. I'm just going to rejig my shelving. Okay, that's better. So now I'm going to recommend another couple of books that I have read that would also fit this prompt, and I'm going again for sort of like slightly different ones to give you more of a range. So the first one is one I always like to talk about whenever the opportunity occurs, is the memoir Unicorn, a memoir of a Muslim drag queen by Amaru Al-Qadi. And this is, I love this book so much. It's so open, so honest. It explores intersectionality a lot in here. Huge amounts of identity. Like, this whole book is Amaru just kind of like trying to come to terms with all the different pieces of themselves, and sometimes they felt like they didn't want that part of them, but like by the end they kind of embrace everything and have kind of come to terms with all parts of them, and who they are. There are moments that feel really dark in here, so again, please take the trigger warnings, but it also does end on something really joyous, and you really get Amaru's sort of one, beautiful writing, but two, sense of humour in here as well. But there is so much that is just like so open, so raw. So do look after yourself when reading it, if you are someone that could very much relate to quite a lot of these topics in here. But it's a beautiful, beautiful book, and I really, really enjoy it. Amaru is non-binary, and also they are from Iraq. So you have that heritage as well, so it definitely fits in the Asian Readathon. I just really recommend it. Not there because it's that's my TBR. And the other one, complete change of feeling. I have a middle grade, and this is See You in the Cosmos by Jack Cheng. So this author is of Chinese heritage, and this is a story of a boy who has got a difficult sort of family situation that you kind of slowly understand more of as the story goes along. But he's just so full of joy and just sort of like hope, and his dream, he wants to send his iPod into space, so that people, maybe like aliens, can pick it up and understand our world, which has been inspired by a lot of space stuff. I recently went to the Space Museum. I don't know if it's called the International Space Museum or something like that. It's a space museum in the UK in Leeds. It was brilliant. I had an amazing time in there with my kids. But there was also a device to play sound on. I really don't think it was a record. But anyway, they sent this out into space, and it's listed all the different sounds they put on it for other people to find at some point. Yeah, this is really cool. So he's got all these dreams, he's very excited, and off he goes, and it's this kind of journey for him. Other people meet him, and it's just so heartwarming. His character is just so beautiful, and it's just, there's definitely a massive naivety there, but it's just a really lovely story. I can't put it into more words than that. It's just it feels very wholesome. you're just rooting for him. You're just rooting for him on this journey, and just friendships and things that happen on this journey. So yeah, this is definitely another one of like self-discovery and identity, as he kind of realizes more about who he is. So he definitely like has all his goals and all his dreams, but he kind of has more of a reflective idea of his family. And I think he's always very clear of who he is, but I think it's everyone else getting to find who he is as well. Not my TBR, put it on the floor. Okay, so the fourth prompt is read a book by an Asian author or featuring an Asian character let's try that again. Prompt 4 is read a book by an Asian author or featuring an Asian character that shows them going on an adventure. So for this one, I am choosing to read a book I should have read for middle grade March but didn't get round to, and that is Asha and the Spirit Bird by Jasbinder Bilan. So this story, I am not entirely sure what it's about, but I know the main character goes on a journey. I know it's something to do with her family, and I know it involves, I believe it involves like Hindu folklore in here as well. So I don't know how much fantastical stuff is in here. I don't know if it's more magical realism or if it's just contemporary with a tiny smattering of folklore ideas. I really know nothing about it. I just know my mum really enjoyed it. So I have borrowed it from her, and I'm really keen to read it. So for this country, it would be India. I can't remember if Jasbinder Bilan is currently in India. I could look at the author bit, couldn't I? That'd be helpful. I think Jasbinder is possibly from the UK, but with Indian heritage. I'm not entirely sure from the acknowledgements or anything in here, but it is definitely like very rich in her culture and in her heritage, and I can't wait to read it. So this one is going on the shelf because it is part of my TBR. Ta-da! It's not falling, hooray! So other books that I had on my list for an adventure. First one, again, it was a library book and I don't own it, and that is Fierce Femmes and I've written it down. Come on, read your words. Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars. And this is it's written as though it's a memoir, but it's a fictional memoir. And this is magical realism and sort of a bit surrealist as well. It's a very sort of short book. And it's written by Tom, who is of Chinese heritage, and she is a trans woman, and this shows the story of a trans girl who leaves home, breaks away from that, and goes off to go and live her life. So I very much see this as like a journey and an adventure as she goes off. Massively will fit into other prompts as well for this as well. You can definitely link it to self-identity and discovery. But she goes off and she meets up with this wonderful sort of community of other trans women, and they decide to kind of take a stand against against the patriarchy, against all the transphobe, against all the people that want to crush them under their feet. And it's got moments of humour, moments of pain. There's some poetry in there as well. It's just, it's one of those books that's really small, but it's really hard hitting. And it's sort of like just a beautiful story. But I definitely think you have to be in the right brain space to read it. Like I was not ready to cope with surrealism, so I like picked it up and put it down again, and then I picked it up and read it and really loved it when I picked it up the second time. So that's kind of more of like a journey, like a physical journey of self-discovery, and kind of like the adventure of like leaving home and going off and finding yourself as well. So the second one is more of your typical journey. I think we have a fantasy journey, and this is Spice Road by Maya Ibrahim. So this one, we have a magical world. We have a map. Always love a map. And there's definitely an adventure in here as they leave this kingdom where they live. Here we go, beautiful map. So we have this kingdom down here, Qualia, that is protected by these sandy storm, deserty place. And then beyond is all of this other world here. So our protagonist and some companions go off, they leave to go out into the other kingdom, and that is all I'm going to tell you, just in case you don't want things spoiled for you. So this one definitely fits that prompt too. Okay, final prompt, sorry, just organising my floor piles there. So the final prompt is read a book featuring an Asian character who is either a hot mess, famous, or eccentric. So for this one, I am going for The School for Good Mothers by Jasmine Chan. Jasmine Chan is of Chinese heritage, and this book is a dystopia. So I've not read a dystopia for a while. I'm very keen to read another dystopia because I do enjoy them. I'm hoping I'm not going to be too triggered by anything in here because it says The School for Good Mothers, and anyone who is a parent will at some point have that moment of feeling that your parenting abilities are under question and that you may be judged by other people. So this book I actually received from my children last year for Mother's Day, which is awesome. And I feel like I'm in a really good place to read it now. I'm feeling in a good headspace, so I don't feel I'll get triggered by anything like that. And I don't really know anything else about this book because I want to go in knowing as little as possible. I'm gonna presume out of the three that the character in here is a hot mess, just because of the vibes I'm kind of getting from it. But I could be wrong, maybe they're famous or eccentric. But this definitely was tagged under someone's suggestions for this prompt, so I'm going with that because it was one of the books I wanted to read. So there we go. I have 2 more books that I want to read. So see, these will definitely fit as prompt number 1. I'm not sure which one I'm going to put in because I really want to read both of them. So the first definitely fits in with me wanting to continue with my series, and that is Reaper at the Gates by Saba Tahir. I have not finished telling you about the recommendations for the characters, have I? Let's rewind. We'll go back to these ones later. Okay, so other books. What's on my list? There's one I didn't have. Oh, no, I do have. I just haven't picked it out yet. Okay, for this one. So I have Sorceror of the Crown by Zen Cho. So this is one of the books in this duology by Zen Cho that I absolutely loved and adored. So we have a Regency setting. We have 2 characters who are not white British. They have African heritage and the other has Indian heritage. So naturally the white British people look down on them. So amidst all of that, you also have this League of Magicians. So magic is seen as something that is for men, and the character Zacharias, who is of African descent, is currently the the Sorcerer Royal, so the head of the magicians, which a lot of people aren't happy about. We then also meet our other protagonist, Prunella, who is of Indian heritage and is in this school for girls where they are trying to suppress magic because magic in women is not good. Magic in men is marvellous, magic in women is not. So already you have feminism in here, and you have exploring racism and a lot of bigotry in this book. But this book is written with lots of social commentary and that kind of wonderful witticisms that I love from Jane Austen. And this was sold to me as Jane Austen with fairies. I was like, yes, I am reading that. And it was brilliant. Absolutely love this book so much. One of the things I know people struggle with is the language. So if you are not familiar with kind of the more classical language, you may struggle with this